This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is July 20th, 2023. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. Luke, what's going on?
This is the first episode in a while that there hasn't been anything really happening between episodes. So it's a little weird that you and I are like having to discuss what we're going to talk about, because it's been kind of just teed up for us for really the past month or two at this point. So now, it's good to be back on the show here, and we have a special guest, Jonathan.
We do. We are joined by Mr. Dan Savage. Dan, how are you? How has your summer been going?
It's been great. Just came back from Summer League, and that's gives you the little fix to hold you over to next season in terms of hoops. So now is actually, kind of the slowest point of the off season, because prior you have, draft prep, you've got combine, you've got lottery, you've got draft itself, then Summer League practices, Summer League. So this is the first time where it's really quiet in terms of hoop news for me. And so, yeah, this is the time to take vacations, do all that fun stuff, and get ready for next season.
Were you there for what is it, 10, 11 days? Were you there for like the entire Summer League?
No, being the vet I am, being with the Magic for like 15 seasons now, I know when you go to that Summer League action, you do it in a halfway spurt. So I was there for the first half. Josh was there for the second half, and we each got a little taste of Vegas.
So the rookies, Anthony Black, Jett Howard, really the first look that we got at those guys, although they only played a few games. What have been like your initial impressions, like getting to know those guys a little bit off the floor? And then what were your impressions on those guys, like making their Summer League debuts and playing a few games?
Well, the interesting thing is anytime you add two rookies to a locker room, you wonder how's that going to affect the locker room dynamic. The Magic have such a good culture that they've built over the years, especially under Jeff, John, and Mose, with the type of guys they've brought in. And, you guys see it with the interactions on social media, with the bench reactions, with, the interviews, all that stuff. And, when you bring in Anthony and Jett, like those two guys are just going to fit right in. Like they're so nice, good kids. The way that they handled media was great. It seemed like they were on NBA TV or ESPN every game, whether they were playing or not. No complaints about it. Just very excited and good kids, eager to fit in and learn. So, it's really hard to tell about personalities till you get a guy in there, because obviously everybody's on their best behavior as they're going through interviews. You don't really know till you have them in there, and those are two guys, good guys. So that's the first thing that stood out to me. And then the second thing is, there's only so much you could really garner from Summer League games. We saw it with Franz. I think I was on this very show being like, hey, look, when you look at this guy in practice during Summer League, he is amazing. He's used as an example. The one thing I've picked about both Anthony and Jett is they're very smart players. They're high IQ. And Anthony in particular, I think the way he sees the game for someone his age, that's very hard to do. He's got a very high IQ. I like the way he sees the floor. And, for the Magic, who, when Markelle Fultz wasn't on the floor at times last year for the early part of the season, when he was injured, and then, when he'd come off the floor later in the season, there's a noticeable difference. And I think now with Anthony, you have multiple guys who are true point guards, and then you have other guys like Franz and Paolo who are capable of being point forwards. And he just gives you so much playmaking. And I think as we've learned in the league, watching the playoffs, it's as much playmaking and skill as you could have, the better off your team is for it. And I think that's something that he brings.
Can you talk about, Dan, like just the difference of your expectation versus the reality of seeing those guys in Summer League between AB and Jett? What kind of stood out to you or took you by surprise the most, maybe from each of their games?
Yeah, it really goes into AB's IQ. You heard a lot of people talk about it. You heard his college coaches talk about it. And then you see it and you're like, okay, this guy just moves differently on the court, the way he goes up and down the court, the way he sees teammates. I think he's still, like you saw, the turnover numbers were a little bit high in summer league action. And I think part of that is, the guys that you have next to you are moving game to game. You're still trying to get a feel for who's next to you, where they're going to be on the court. But I think as, when the actual games start, that's not going to be an issue with him. I just think he sees the game at such a high level for someone his age. The other thing for me during summer league is, it's really become like all-star weekend in a sense for like draft prospects. So it's like the flip side, like, all-star weekend, you see everybody, but everybody's known, like they're all known quality. Like, what LeBron is when he's going out there, what Book is when he's going out there. When you have summer league and you have all this condensed, front offices combining together, I think like 17 teams stayed in our very hotel. You get an opportunity to talk to a lot of, different people, different scouts, different front office people for different teams. And the one thing that, I was surprised with is like universally people are like, oh man, Anthony Black has a chance to be something special. Like, Orlando got lucky where they took him. We had him ranked higher, this and that. Like, he was universally like a guy, like our team was thinking about trying to move up to get him. Like, he fell in that bucket. And it's just really good to hear so many teams, talk about how good his workout was with them or, et cetera, how impressed they were with him through the draft process. Did not hear one negative thing about him at all. So really excited to see him, grow and compete against a lot of these guys as we go into the season.
And what about Jett, Dan? What were your takeaways from him from Summer League? And what surprised you for him?
Yeah, I think, Jett wasn't somebody I spent a ton of time like pre-draft process on. Like it was, I was just like everybody else. You look at kind of the list and you start going through and, you start making time. And I caught a few Michigan games just because, with our Michigan pipeline now that we're building in Orlando, you always know that there's a chance somebody from Michigan could wind up on this roster. So, I did that. What I was surprised about him is just, his shot making can be, come in waves where he could really just heat up. And I think the thing with him early in his career is like, obviously you want to be even more consistent with it than he is. But I think early on, he could be a guy that could alter the course of a game, as we saw like Terrence Ross do, where it's like when he's on fire, like he's making them from all over the place. And I think that's something that Jett Howard has the capability to do. He's also got great size. You look at him, like he's got good size for his position. And, while he may not have had the collegiate career defensively that some would have, hoped for him, I think as Jeff Weltman alluded to, he played hurt through some of his season. And I think, he's a willing competitor on that end of the floor. And I think he'll grow into it defensively over the course of his career.
Speaking of the Michigan pipeline that has seemingly been created here in Orlando, thinking about it, like you go back to the last previous drafts, the Magic have drafted a guy out of Michigan, coached by Jett Howard. Dan, have you spent any time thinking about that? And like one guy is like, okay, cool. Two guys like, all right, this is kind of a coincidence. Three is like a pattern, like something is going on here. What do you think it is? Like, does it have anything to do with like the style of offense that they run at Michigan, sort of like a pro style offense? And maybe they think like, okay, what you're seeing this guy do is good. He's going to be able to replicate that in the league. Like, what do you think it is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't really given that much thought. I mean, it could be that, Juwan knows what it takes to make it at that level. And the guys that they're bringing in fit a mold of a guy who, really knows what players, can play at an elite level, and he's a good teacher. So I think it's a good combination of that there. And look, Jett Howard is even closer to that than anybody, being his son. So, I think he's got good genetics. He's a real good kid. And I think that's something that, all those guys have in common is they're really good people and they're hard workers. They care about the game of basketball and they want to get better. And, in a league where that may be not necessarily always the case, I think with all those guys, you really look like they love the game of basketball. They want to get better. They want to work hard. And that's really, part of the culture the Magic are trying to build.
One of the things, Dan, that has been introduced, well, not introduced, but we're getting more details. And part of that was at Summer League, and talking about Summer League is the in-season tournament, that's going to be rolled out, where the Magic ended up in Group East C with Boston, Chicago, Brooklyn, Toronto. And then I think if you are the champion, you win the championship of that tournament, it's like $500,000, so it's a nice incentive, especially for younger players that are still on rookie contracts. How do you think the Magic are going to approach that next season? Like, do you think they're going to take that super seriously? And just what are your thoughts overall on the new tournament?
Well, I like it a lot. And I'll tell you, my biggest concern heading into it when, it was rumored and people were talking about it and you'd hear it come up in different meetings is how would you know that this is a particular night that, if you're not pausing the season, that this is where the in-season tournament's taking place. As I cover the NBA 2K League as well, and they run a lot of tournaments amidst the season. And I think they've gotten better with it, but there's been some confusion like, okay, is this 3v3? Is this 5v5? How's this tournament going? Like, it's really hard for a casual fan to follow along with that. Like, the diehard 2K fans get it. They know. But if I were trying to explain it to somebody who hasn't watched NBA 2K, they would struggle. I think the one thing the league got right with this is, look, Tuesday, Fridays, these are tournament nights. You get focused, it's very easy to convey ahead of time. So that was a big thing. I was worried about it, and I think they've taken care of it. The other thing that I think is a big advantage for a team like the Magic is, I know Mose has really tried to get guys experience in these highly competitive situations without the team having been in the playoffs. Like, there's no substitute for playoff experience. But he's used these back-to-backs that we've had against teams like the Celtics this past season, where you had 2 straight games in the same city. And that second game, they're going to make an adjustment to what you just did. And so it gives a little bit of playoff simulation. I think the stakes of this tournament, while it may not be the huge thing right off the bat that it will be 10 years down the road, I think the one thing is it simulates is, okay, these games are important. There's increased value to them. You get something if you perform well in them, that it comes closer to being like a playoff-like atmosphere. So for a young, inexperienced team, that adds value and can perhaps accelerate the growth process as a team prepares to make, its first playoff run since it's altered the roster over a bit.
Gabe Vincent of now the Los Angeles Lakers was on JJ
Redick's.
Redick's.
Used to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. JJ Redick had him on his show, the podcast Old Man and the Three, recently, and he was talking to Gabe about the in-season tournament, and he was pretty much just getting his pulse on it. JJ, his synopsis of it was, "Hey, I wasn't on board with the play-in tournament, and now I think that it's great for the game of basketball. I don't think I'm on board with the in-season tournament." Is pretty much what he went on to say. He asked Gabe. He asked Gabe about it, and he said it was crazy to him that the runner-up of this in-season tournament gets $200,000 per player, and what he got for making the finals this year was also $200,000. He was like, at what point are we differentiating between the importance of the Larry O'Brien and this? He was like, I would 100 times over rather win the Larry O'Brien than the in-season tournament. I don't think that's a shock to anybody. But have you thought about the money prize and how that works? Because some people were like, $500,000 isn't really enough for these teams that have won championships and stuff for the winner of this tournament for them to care. And then you got Gabe Vincent, who kind of shifts it, puts it on his head of, it's crazy to me that these are being put on the same in terms of financial value.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it a bit. I don't know what the, I'm not making a pun here, but the magic number is to really get it to work. I think, look, once you've reached the status of like KD and, Jason Tatum and all those, star players, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, the money isn't going to make a difference, but those guys are so highly competitive anyway that they're worried about legacy. And like, who knows how people will view the legacy of the, in-season tournament later down the road. Like if you're the first player who wins the in-season tournament, wins the championship, is finals MVP, is league MVP, like that may do something to continue to enhance your legacy and legacy build. And those things are important to those, type of guys. That's how they've, ascended the way that they have. So I think for them, that value is going to be in that. And I think for, a lot of guys on the roster, whether it's young guys or even if you're a mid-level guy, you look at how much gets taken away in taxes whenever you do that breakdown. Like this is a good supplement for that, like that adds to it. And, you can't really make enough for a playing career that, on average is only a couple years. So I think it's going to do a lot for those guys. And like I said, I think the highly competitive high end players will set the tone because, they're worried about legacy building, and maybe it doesn't happen in year one, but as the years go by, I think it'll start to catch on.
All right, let's take a quick break to talk about our Patreon, and then we'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by our wonderful patrons. If you haven't heard already, we have a Patreon community where for as little as $2 a month, you can help support the show and help us do all the things we do and have cool episodes and fun guests and giveaways and events and all that kind of stuff. Would not be possible without our patrons. So if you are interested at all in becoming one of our patrons and helping support, hopefully, your favorite podcast, you can find us at patreon.com/the6man show. As a special little bonus, we shout out brand new patrons any episode that we have them. And every episode, we shout out our Hall of Fame and Elite tier patrons, which I'm going to take the opportunity to do right now, starting with Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Carson Tulo, Jonathan Borges, Normal, Magic Player History, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapon, The Distract, Donkey Punch Dave, Paolo and Franz's Warmth, Pierre A, Nostalgia and M&M's, Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Eduardo Sanchez, Drummy Drum, Danimal, Dodo 15, Bobby Skinner, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Eric Lopez, Fuchsia, Juan Geraldo, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Destined for Greatness, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95 Shred, Junior Bruce, Half Freakin, Shahin 177, Bulby the Dawn, Himlo Ben Himro, RM Prov 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Spank Too Hard, Soft Taco, Jesse, Fuego Nando, Victor Cologne, Phantom Wolf 72, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle, Only Franz, Maria, Keith Wallace, Fritz, Currency Kev, Bruv Sal. A big thank you to all of our patrons. You can find us at patreon.com/the6man show. Let's get back to our conversation with Dan Savage. Dan, talking about the in-season tournament, and we mentioned that the Magic are in Group East or East Group C, whatever the way that you want to break that down, with Boston, with Toronto, with Chicago, with Brooklyn. What, in kind of considering how seriously some of the contenders are going to take the in-season tournament, what do you think of the Magic's odds to end up coming out of that Group C?
No, when I saw the group list, I was excited because one, I think the Magic fans have always felt a little bit of rivalry with Toronto ever since, DJ Augustine hit that shot and, made that a series right off the jump for what ended up being a Toronto, finals run. So I like that. And, there's always been the Scotty Barnes, Jalen Suggs talk, that seemed to renew it. So like that element, there's plenty of storylines to go along there. Boston, the Magic have played tough, as we saw last year. So if you're going to pick an elite team that has to be in that bracket, like a team that, it's going to be fun, it's going to be competitive. You get the Duke storylines with, Paolo, Tatum, etc. Eddie House gifts can circulate the internet afterwards. We can see a little bit of that. So that's a lot of fun. And then Chicago, I mean, if you talk about a team that Magic fans have perhaps followed closer than, any other non-Magic team over the past couple of years, for their draft standing, it would be them. So there's always been a little bit of inherent rivalry there just amongst the fan bases in terms of how they're going to, root for one another. Magic fans are rooting for Chicago's demise, so that pick conveys in a pretty good spot. And, whether or not they've actually thought their pick is conveyed to us over the years, if you've watched their draft broadcast video, you know what I'm talking about. The Magic have gotten both of those in pretty good spots, and I think gotten pretty good players from that. So you have a lot of storylines. Brooklyn, hard to see exactly where they're going to be right now. We'll see if they continue to add. Do they subtract? They're an interesting team to follow, as the season goes on. But obviously, as we saw with Bridges, he can change any game. So I think for the teams that draw, there's a lot of interesting storylines, a lot of competitive teams, but all teams I think the Magic can play pretty well. So I like the draw that Orlando got. Just from a coverage standpoint and interest standpoint, I think it couldn't have turned out better at all.
Dan, my favorite part is going to be when the Magic win, Paolo wins the MVP of the tournament, and then we get that's called the Paolo Banchero Trophy for the rest of history. That's what I'm really looking forward to. But I also, Dan, I know, we won't get into specifics or anything like that, but DraftKings has come out with win totals for NBA teams. The Magic last season, 26.5 was where it was set. Jonathan and I both looked at each other on the podcast and we're like, this is a no-brainer. This team's winning over 26 games. There's just no question about it. You look at the growth that this team could have after not having a healthy season, adding number one pick, all of that. And then this year, they've set it at 35.5. Your perspective on what the Magic can do this upcoming season and how many games do you think that the Magic win?
Yeah, I hate answering that question prior to fully seeing the schedule because it's an exercise I do every year. Mm-hmm. And for example, there's certain things, everybody looks at the number of back-to-backs. I like to see what the first game back is after long road trips and how many long road trips they have. I always just think that is the tough, as somebody who travels with the team, I feel my most tired is when we return from a road trip and then it's that next game at home. I have no juice. And so I always try to see what those games are because I feel like if it's it winds that fine line because obviously if it's a real premier opponent, guys are going to get up for that anyway. You don't want to fall in that mid bucket where it's could kind of sleep on them, but these guys could go off. Those are the ones I pay close attention to because, man, it's when you come back from the West Coast, it's you lose that whole next day traveling. And then, you get a team the next day and it's you feel like you've been home for 6 hours and you're playing a game, even though it's technically a full day after the next one. So I like to see how elements like that fall into it before I make my full prediction. Now, with that being said, I think you said the total being 35 wins or something like that. And you look at the number of wins the Magic had last year, and that's not a far off number. And then you factor in, the way the Magic closed the season over 500, assuming health, which is hard to do in this league, health is everything. I really like the Magic's chances to surpass that because I think they really built something nice last season. They found a way to play. Markelle showed that he is a true floor general and, was playing some of his best basketball at the end of the season. To me, I just saw his bounce come back. That was the most noticeable thing. He was always great at reading the floor, but the burst on some of those dunks, we saw, him take in, I believe it was a Miami game, just this easy three, taking it freely. I'm very high and bullish on him heading into this season. And look, Paolo's going to work. He's playing with Team USA. We've seen in the past when players play in these type of environments, they come back even better. Franz is going to do, his thing. I'm really excited to see how those elements carry over to this team. And I just think that they're going to pick up where they left off. Now, a lot of work goes into it. You know, all these guys have to work hard. They can't just expect like, hey, I'm going to come back doing the last thing. Like, it's going to be a lot of work, but I trust the work ethic of everybody on this team to really put themselves in a position. And then you look at the X factors, like, could Jonathan Isaac stay healthy? Like, if he has a season, we saw, you know, what he could do when he was back there, what a game changer he can be. You know, that's exciting. Like, if Markelle has to miss a game or two, does Anthony like keep that, you know, Anthony Black keep that like level of play where he could carry for a few games? Like, if those type of things happen, like, and that brings the floor up, like those are going to be intriguing elements. And like, you know, one guy nobody's, you know, talking about as much like nationally is like, you know, Jalen Suggs has a full off season of work. Like, he hasn't had to do that, hasn't had that opportunity. Like, you start talking about defenders that can alter a game, and you talk about Anthony Black, you talk about Jalen Suggs, you talk about Jonathan Isaac. Like, we saw in the postseason just how valuable good defense is. Like, those are guys who could flip a game on its head and do those things. So I'm excited to see, you know, at the start of camp, what these guys look like for the work that they're putting in now.
Luke, it's so funny because you and I, like, we sit here and we talk about this team twice a week. We text all day, every day talking about this team. But for some reason, whenever we have a guest on the show, whether they're like, you know, working for the Magic or just talking about the Magic, whenever they speak positively about the Magic, it gets me so freaking hyped, man. Like, I cannot already wait for October for Orlando Magic basketball. Dan, the thing about that, though, is in just over 2 weeks, we're going to start to get some of these friendly and warm-up matchups for the FIBA World Cup. And the Magic have, 5 players on the roster that are going to be playing in the FIBA World Cup. We've got Paolo, Mo, Franz, Joe Ingles, Goga Batadze. Like, you kind of already alluded to how much this could do for Paolo playing in Team USA, but it also feels like, you know, Germany has a chance in this thing too, you know, with the roster they have and Franz and Mo. So are you going to be paying like super close attention to FIBA? Are you going to be like watching all these games, like just waiting for the season to come back or what?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I remember last year I was in Maine on vacation, and Franz was playing for Germany, and like, I'm in the wood. Like, when I tell you I'm in the wilderness, like, there's nobody like within miles of me where I'm staying. And I've got like using like Starlink type setup to get literally Starlink to get phone service to then like stream the Germany games, and like watching Dennis Schroeder take over and like be like, and watching Magic fans reaction, like, get Franz the ball, like, you know, and all that stuff. So it's just, it was a lot of fun. So yes, I will be paying close attention to all of them, because to me, like, especially with, you know, some of the foreign teams, like, there's so much those guys place into seniority and, like, you know, what you've done for them to how much opportunity you'll get. And, like, for Franz to be as high on the pecking order as he was at that age says a lot about him. Like, this is Franz, like, right after his rookie year, not what he is now even. And it was like, you saw what that confidence of being that high on a, you know, a foreign national team did for him heading into his sophomore season. And so you look at it for a guy, you know, like Paolo, Franz, you know, we'll assume he gets even more, you know, responsibility with that team. You know, what it could do for a young guy like Goga, like all that's exciting. And I just like to see how they're used. Are they used any differently? Do they show you something maybe you're not seeing when they're playing at the NBA level? You know, those are all things I'll be paying close attention to, because, like, you know, you watch like the way Franz played at Michigan, and then you watch him, you know, in his first practices of summer league, and you're like, this guy's doing things that, like, I didn't even see him do on his college tape. And so, like, you always wonder when they see him in, you know, a different setting, do they show you elements that maybe they haven't unlocked yet and that they're just waiting for that opportunity, and maybe they reveal it in this setting. So those are all things I'll be paying close attention to.
Dan, one more question for you before you and I start to talk about our second favorite thing. Anthony Parker, the new Magic GM, John Hammond is transitioning into like a senior advisory role. Can you just talk a little bit about the time that you spent around Anthony Parker and what should Magic fans know about Anthony Parker?
Oh man. I mean, AP, that dude. Yeah. I mean, he is like that dude. It's hard to put into words.
He's him.
He's got such a positive way about him. When he was first brought in, it was okay, this guy is going to go. Sometimes you just know, you see it and you're that guy's going to go places. The first time you saw Paolo on a court, you're okay, that's different. That's special. And when you sit down with AP, it's just he's got this way of listening and explaining and talking. And he's just got a special way about him that you never know. This guy was a former NBA player, achieved, big things. And I think he's had success at every level he's been with the organization. We saw he did with, they're now the Osceola Magic, but when they were in Lakeland and getting them a G League championship and the success he had there, transitioning over, he's a guy who's going places, and I'm glad that he's here because I think he knows how to relate to players on a special level. I think he's got a great eye for talent. He's just a valuable guy to have in the room, and I think everybody loves working with him. I've never met anybody who would have one negative thing to say about Anthony Parker, and in that business, that is so hard to do. So I'm really excited for Anthony. There's an outpouring of support from every former Magic person that overlapped with Anthony, of their excitement for him. I heard everybody talking about Summer League about it. I know AP, he's not one to want to be in the spotlight, and everybody, it seemed as you're at Summer League, waiting for the bus and other teams are passing through, are oh man, congrats, AP. This is so excited for the guy because he's so good. And he's just I just want to go about do my thing, so I'm excited for him. And, there were a lot of other guys along the way that kind of got promotions, to see Dylan Murphy from where he came from, in the organization, to now be the head coach of a G League team is just awesome. And I think the other part about that is he's worked so closely with Mose, in the film room, getting up to practices and stuff like that. So I think it's a very underrated thing. He coaches his summer league practice. He's working with guys like Kevon, Caleb, Anthony Black, Jett Howard, who in theory could all spend some time, G League, whether it's practicing or playing in a game, etc. And you have a guy that knows exactly what the head coach wants. The front office over there, Kevin Tiller, spent time with the Magic, is now over there. The Magic are growing talent by starting him off in Orlando, then giving him an opportunity to grow in now Osceola, and then bringing him back in. And I think that kind of pipeline of developments is just, is going to breed so much unison between the two organizations and set up those players that are spending time there for success when they come back to Orlando. So I think Jeff, John, and Mose have done such a great job with setting that culture and pipeline in place that I think it's going to have dividends and unison that, even a lot of other teams that haven't necessarily experienced yet. I think it's going to be an example of how you do it.
Anthony Parker getting Paolo Banchero comparisons as a GM. I personally love that.
He's going to hate that I said that. He's going to hate that I talked highly. I'm hoping he doesn't listen to it because he'll be stop.
I can almost guarantee you he does not listen to the 6-man show, but we would really love that.
Know.
Well, hey.
You never know. You'd be surprised how many people listen.
We will keep that in mind for sure. But no, I love the point that you make about Osceola now and being this development pipeline. Luke and I have had conversations, just in recent years about how, at least I wish the NBA would utilize the G League more like the MLB does the minors with like rehab assignments and stuff like that. We saw that last year with Jonathan Isaac. We saw guys like RJ Hampton and Caleb Houston, who weren't getting as much playing time, go down to G League and really thrive down there. So I hadn't thought about that perspective with Dylan Murphy working so close with Mose that, although, other coaches have done a great job, with Lakeland in recent years, that is going to make it more seamless, I think. So I really like that.
Yeah, and it's such a short ride now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right across town there. Guys are really going to be able to go back and forth, pretty seamlessly. So that definitely can't be understated.
Last year, I was on the broadcast for it, but they did, a game at Amway Center during the day. It was like the doubleheader against the Bucks. Like, the Wisconsin Herd, played the Magic in the G League game during the day. And then, at night you had the Magic in Bucks play. So, those could be fun again. I'd recommend it for anybody, who's a diehard. Like, that was a lot of fun, for me. It was something different. So if they do that again this year, I'm pushing for it. I'd recommend coming out for that. It's a fun day.
Yeah, I made the trip to Lakeland last year when J.I., made his return, part one of his return, I guess. And I had a great time at the Lakeland game. So now that it's right across town, if the Magic aren't playing, or, if the Osceola Magic are playing it at Amway and you don't have any plans, be sure to go out and support those guys, because, you'll never know. You may see Caleb Houston there, or, Kevon Harris or one of those guys. So definitely take advantage of that now that the G League affiliate is a little bit closer. Dan, I want to pivot to, this is where Luke is probably going to tune out a little bit. Luke admittedly is not a big Boy Meets World fan, but Dan Savage and I, anytime we have a casual conversation, it usually gets brought up in one way or another, whether we're going through another rewatch of the show, or we're listening to the podcast, or myself and Dan and Comrade, who also works, with the Osceola Magic and the Orlando Magic. We're going to be going to the Boy Meets World live show here in a few months in Orlando, so we're looking forward to that. But Dan, last time you were on the show, I prepared the trivia. So now it is Dan's turn. We're going to go through some Orlando Magic trivia, and I'm hoping I do pretty well here. I do not want to look like a Boy Meets World casual.
No. And I'll tell you this, when I come for podcasts, usually I'm talking about the Magic, so it's what I live and breathe. So my prep time is very little. I just make sure I, just refresh my brain with it, which is aging, about all the numbers that I'm thinking about, I may talk about, assuming the subject matter. But for this part, I delved, and I probably did like an hour and a half of prep today.
Oh no. That does not bode well for me.
Because there's different levels to it. Like, is this reasonable for somebody to know? Like, if you've watched it. And so there were things to me that stood out, and I had to pull them. I'm like, that's just too random. And then there were other things I'm like, this is too easy for Jonathan. Right. So I had to be in that sweet spot of challenging but possible. And then I wanted to tear into it. So it started off a little bit easy, and then we got to some really diehard stuff. So
I don't want what color t-shirt is Sean wearing in this scene in episode 5 of season 4? We don't want any of that. But hopefully I don't get cooked too bad here. I don't want to embarrass myself.
So all these have to do with the plot line of each episode. So that was my criteria. Okay. They weren't random. They were all part of the plot line. And I feel like when I'm in my watch through phase, which this made me tonight when I go to bed, it's going to be to Boy Meets World, because I'm restarting the watch through as a result of this task.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to start off right off the bat. This is season 1, episode 2 stuff. And we're going to get into, we're going to set the table. It's going to be nice and easy for you. At the lunch table, which I felt like the show did such a great job in the early seasons of setting the tone of what it was like to be at a lunch table in that era. Corey, Sean, and another kid discuss, what superhero they would like to be their dad. And what superhero did Corey much to the chagrin of Sean. Which superhero did he want to be his dad?
See, I know how the episode ends, and that's the only superhero that is in my mind. So I'm going to say Superman.
That is correct. See, it's tied to the plot line. That's why it wasn't too random, because not only does he say it there, but at the end he reveals his dad is Superman for how heroic he is, in helping raise that family. So nice touch. Good start. All right, this is, I think, an easy one. It takes place in season 4. Eric breaks up with a girl and gets a song written about him. What is the title of that song?
I want to say the first thing that's coming to mind is Stupid Boy.
Very close. Oh. You get half credit. It is Shallow Boy.
Shallow Boy. Dang it.
Shallow. It had like that grunge flavor of that era.
Yeah, that's what I call Jonathan, actually.
Shallow. That's very interesting.
Bonus points if you can name the second song that's written about it. I'll give you the other half.
Nope.
It's like he's a dandelion.
I knew it was a flower, but I was going to say sunflower, but that would have been wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's dandelion. I didn't confirm that.
I think you're right.
All right, this should be easy. It's still in that first tier. At the end of season 4, Sean joins a cult. It's also the last we see of Mr. Turner. What is the name / location? They're both the same. I'll take it either of that cult.
I know it's called the Center.
There you go. All right, we're back. We're like 2.5 out of 3. All right, this is random. This is the challenging. You got 2 more left. And, of this best of 5 playoff series here. In season 3, episode 11, the boys steal the key to Mr. Feeney's cabin. It's one of the first of several cabin episodes that go on in this series. Where is the location of Mr. Feeney's
Poconos.
Cabin? Bam! Look at you. What a stud.
I do this, baby.
3.5 out of 4.
Luke cannot believe that I know all of this.
I really can't believe this is happening, to be honest with you.
Now this one is hard, but I may or may not have practiced this when I was younger for no apparent reason. So I had to include this in the episode because as a young Dan Savage, I actually knew this and would do it along with the episode. So season 2, episode 11. Corey takes one of Sean's dates because he's playing like both sides to Chubby's. He's trying to keep girls busy, and help out his friends. So, they don't know that he's trying to figure out which girl he wants to date. And he brings her to Chubby's and teaches her how to order at Chubby's. How do you do an order at Chubby's?
You order. I know I'm going to mess up parts of this, but I think I know most of it. You're going to order a turkey chubby with everything. That's all I can remember is a turkey chubby. He's going to turn around. He's going to like wipe his nose and ask you what you want. You're going to say a turkey chubby with what? And you say with everything.
You would be able to order at Chubby's based off that because the total sequence is you're going to go up to the counter. He's going to turn around. He's going to raise one eyebrow at you and he won't speak. You then have a 2-second window to order. You'll say turkey chubby. He'll then wipe his nose. You then say with everything. He'll size you up. And then if he asks you what you want to drink, you're in for life.
I was very close.
Bonus points if I'll give you the other half a point you're missing from a perfect 5 out of 5. If you know what he'll do for you if you ask for a diet soda.
He gives you half of the soda.
He gives you half a cup.
Yeah. The reason, luckily you went like early seasons. If you would have went later, I probably would have been in trouble. With the rewatch, I've rewatched the first like the first 3 seasons over the course of the past year. So a lot of that is still pretty fresh in my mind. But
yeah, those are my favorites. So I was going with my wheelhouse as well. I didn't want to step anywhere where it would be something that I wouldn't know if I was asked.
Right.
So.
When you start getting into the later seasons, like 6, 7, there's a noticeable drop off. And Dan, I hope you know that the couple of times that we've talked about Boy Meets World on the show, it has inspired like multiple listeners and Magic fans who had never watched Boy Meets World before to go through and watch the entire series. And I know of at least 2 people who have claimed that it is one of the greatest shows they've ever watched.
Now I feel like I've truly made an impact on this world. I'm serious. Like, I feel like I've done good. I volunteer every week at an animal sanctuary, and that what you just gave me in return is even a greater feeling than it does working with the animals. I'm serious about that. Like, I feel like part of my life's duty is complete.
Serving your community every week pales in comparison to getting people to watch Boy Meets World. That's where we are as a podcast.
About that. That's what the sad part is.
He's tripling down.
Luke, what have been your thoughts on like the last 10 minutes of this podcast episode?
It was a different language, talking about some place called Chubby's, which to that point I just thought it was short shorts, so I didn't know where we were ordering from. And then we started talking about sandwiches and lift and eyebrows. I don't know. That was a journey. Thank you guys for that.
Awesome. All right. I think that is going to do it for this episode. Dan Savage, sir, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for always being a joy to talk to. We tell everybody this, as we're talking to, fans or people that just ask about the podcast. When the team that you root for and like have loved your entire life, when you find out how good the human beings are that work for the team, it makes you even prouder, to root for the team that we do. So like, from top to bottom, literally everybody that we've come in contact with, just great people. Appreciate you always taking the time. Appreciate you for being a great dude. And looking forward to seeing you at Magic Games this year.
When you go 5 for 5 on a Boy Meets World quiz, like, you could call me anytime. I'm
I don't believe in like half points, so I'll take the 4. I'll take the 4 for 5.
But you got the half with the bonus. It's like
I know.
You got the points back. I challenged you. That was good.
I appreciate that, Dan. So I think the next time that we're going to see you is probably going to be Media Day, if I had to guess. So looking forward to that, and that is quickly approaching, folks. That's just going to be at the beginning of October. So in about 2 weeks, international play will start. That's going to run throughout August and potentially the first week or so of September, and then all of a sudden we've got like 3-4 weeks until the Magic season is basically starting again. So again, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time, man. Really, really appreciate it. That is going to do it for this episode. For Dan Savage, for Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!